Welcome and thank you for joining us for what will be an insightful 60-minute conversation exploring new thinking and developments in peer review. My name is Martin Delahanty and I will be your host. This event is kindly hosted by World Scientific Publishing and aligns with this year's Peer Review Week theme of exploring how technology is reshaping scholarly publishing. World Scientific Publishing is an internationally renowned scholarly and academic books and journals publisher, headquartered in Singapore, but with global offices including London, UK. The learning objectives today will include the role of AI and machine learning in streamlining the peer review process, ensuring transparency and integrity in peer review, innovative platforms for managing and incentivizing peer reviewers, the impact of open peer review models on scholarly communication, balancing technology innovation with the human element in peer review, and addressing bias and improving diversity in peer review. I would like to welcome our distinguished speakers, both with backgrounds in scholarly publishing and academic research. Dr. Sven Fund is Managing Director of Reviewer Credits with a PhD in political science and expertise in library and information science. Dr. Kostas Agalou is Deputy Director of Journals Europe at World Scientific Publishing in London, with a background as a research scientist in chemical and material sciences. Welcome, Sven and Kostas.
Thank you, Martin.
Good morning, Martin.
So let's begin, Kostas, with you and maybe drawing on your background and experience as an author. So as a former postdoctoral material scientist and author, what was your experience of peer review? And now that you are a publisher, what would you like to see done differently?
Yes, so hello, everyone. Thank you, Martin, for the introduction. And as you mentioned, my background comes from materials chemistry. So as every PhD student, I had to author my own papers. And this was my first kind of interaction with a publisher. And it was explained to me by my supervisor what the peer review process entails, which I discovered that it can be, a double-edged sword. It can be rewarding, but frustrating at the same time. It can be rewarding because you can receive detailed, constructive feedback from other peers who can, with their feedback, can help you refine your work, making it more robust and rigorous. But at the same time, the process can be slow. So your manuscript might be in review for months and without receiving any updates on the process of the peer review. So this kind of closed nature of the process sometimes leads to frustration from authors, especially if the feedback is subjective or inconsistent with the study's strengths, because some reviewers provide a very detailed, insightful feedback, while others may offer vague or unhelpful comments. So this inconsistency can make the process feel like a gamble, with the outcome sometimes depending more on reviewers' personalities than the quality of the science. Now, from the other side of the spectrum as a publisher, the perspective shifts from obviously from the experience of publishing your own work towards ensuring fairness, efficiency, and scalability, whilst at the same time maintaining the integrity of peer review. So to answer the second part of your question, Martin, what I would do differently, I think I would like to see some transparency in the peer review process. So open peer review could address many of the issues faced by authors. So I would probably invest in training programs for reviewers to standardize the quality of reviews and reduce variability, because many scientists don't receive formal training in how to conduct a peer review, which leads to the inconsistent feedback authors often experience. So, and another thing I would probably do is to have more flexibility in the peer review models that we currently have for allowing authors to and reviewers to choose between open and double-blind peer review, which could have its own benefits by creating a dialogue and discussion of the published work and encouraging continuous progress of ideas.
Right. Thank you, Kostas, for that introductory perspective. And if I can turn to you, Sven, and maybe think about the reviewer perspective. And of course, there's been this growing concern about reviewer fatigue, where researchers feel undervalued and maybe unsung for their critical contributions to the peer review process. What needs to be done to improve upon the situation, and how will technology support?
Yeah, Martin, I think Kostas has said it all already, right? In principle, I think it is really important that in our experience at Reviewer Credits, whenever we do a survey, 90+% of reviewers surveyed say we like to review in principle. It is not something that we dislike, that we find unimportant or something like that. They like to review, and I think the problem really starts for researchers with that very first situation. Kostas, you mentioned it. You are getting into a situation, your PI puts this article on your desk and manuscript on your desk and basically says, I don't have time, can you review for me? 40%, there's this Pablon's report from a few years ago, 40% of early career researchers particularly say they have never been trained. And how can that be in an industry where this is our quality assurance? We cannot leave quality assurance to people who are great researchers, but in the persona as a reviewer in improving content for publication, they are not being trained. In my conversations, I remember one conversation at Academic Publishing in Europe, the conference in Berlin 2 years ago, where early career researchers also said it makes them nervous that they constantly learn something intellectually and then apply it. Here they have to apply something that they have never learned. So obviously that doesn't make too much sense. But I think there's more. I mean, there is the element of recognition of the work. If a review takes between 4 and 6 hours somewhere, that's the estimates across disciplines. How can we expect people to do 1 to 3 reviews a month or a week without making visible to the outside world what they did? I have a friend who is a director at a Max Planck Institute in Germany, and he said, he does 3 reviews on average per week. Let's assume it's 15 hours, right? And he says, so my colleagues keep asking me, what do you do in your office all the time? Obviously, at home office. So he is reviewing. So I think reviewing, in some cases, also rewarding, in specific cases, is an important element. Then I personally don't understand why there is not more standardization, like minimum standards when it comes to review reports, for example. Why do reviewers have to adjust from one journal to another in publishers when they deliver a review report? That it should not be a kind of logistics issue, but it should be a focus on content, in my view. And I think a lot of reviewers find that difficult and annoying. And then there is assistance, right? A lot of, probably we'll talk about that a little bit later, but a lot of assistance systems, AI assistants that are under development right now. Let's assume you can reduce the reviewing time by 30 to 50%. That would solve a number of problems for the industry as a business problem, but also for science and research in terms of speed of publication and so on at once. And it would give reviewers more time and still retain the same quality. So I think I'm a big believer in human-assisted technology. I think it can help us a lot and make thousands, millions of people happier in reviewing articles.
And some great insights there, Sven. I think also, just to one of your first points, is that reviewers like to review. So I think because of the perception of the pressure on the peer review process, the lack of the volume and diversity of peer reviewers to begin with, and then the challenges around time, that actually it's a painful experience. But that's your close proximity and surveys of reviewers counters that, and I think that's a really good message to take away, that reviewers like to review. Reviewing is rewarding, and that's why reviewers participate and want to participate, but it's to the point of publishers then moving towards processes and efficiencies that will help reduce that that time element, and that the lack of standardization again is quite crazy. It's hard to understand that, and that will make you know, a big improvement, along with the potential for AI assisted tools, as you said. So turning to the publisher, back to the publisher perspective with you, Kostas, what do you think are the challenges that publishers face in maintaining and advancing the peer review system for journals?
Yeah, absolutely. The publishers currently face many challenges to maintain the peer review system for the journals that we publish. So these challenges are driven by the growing number of research, the need for rigorous and transparent valuations. So in my opinion, there are several challenges. One is shortage of reviewers. So as I said, the number of submissions increases, and finding qualified reviewers becomes increasingly difficult for us. And many researchers are already overwhelmed with their own work, and peer review is often an unpaid, time-consuming task. Second, there is a reviewer fatigue. So many researchers face review overload, leading to slower turnaround times, rush reviews, or reluctance to participate to review other manuscripts. So this can reduce the quality of peer review and delay the publication process. As we already touched upon, there's variable review standards. So peer review quality can vary significantly depending on the expertise, the thoroughness, the engagement of the reviewers. So making sure that reviewers are consistent across different papers that they review and the journals that they review for is a significant challenge. Another challenge, I think, is bias. Reviewers can have personal biases or preferences, so that can also affect the fairness of the review. Another one is detecting conflicts of interest. So identifying potential conflicts of interest among reviewers is also another challenge. Because some reviewers might have personal or professional ties with some authors, and that can influence the integrity of the review process. And the other one is time pressures. So authors are often under pressure to publish quickly, and delays in the review process can create frustration for authors and reduce the overall satisfaction with the journal's process. Other challenges related to AI and automation. AI tools are already in place in peer review, such as plagiarism detection, language checks, or even initial screening of papers. These tools are on the rise, but making sure that these tools are reliable and unbiased and accurate is a challenge. So I think, in general, these are the main challenges that publishers face in maintaining and advancing the peer review system for journals, and it's a work in progress.
It continues to be a work in process, as you say, and it's the potential of also the introduction of these AI assisted tools, which hopefully we will see benefits. But again, I think there are concerns, and just raising those concerns now will alleviate any fears in the near future for successful adoption of these tools by authors and peer reviewers. So being aware of the potential pitfalls will allow us hopefully to present a very positive benefit to AI machine learning tools. And maybe, Sven, coming back to your mention of reward, and again, that the process of peer review is rewarding for those peer reviewers, but perhaps we've just not been good in recognition and reward. And there's a class action lawsuit, which is hitting the headlines just this week in the United States, and it alleges that major academic publishers have conspired to fix the price of peer review at zero, and alleging that scholars are coerced into free labor by linking it to publication opportunities. So there's some allegations there that there are restrictions on peer review, and that ultimately publishers are benefiting in monetary terms, billions of dollars from scientific research funding without paying reviewers. Is there a better way for publishers to recognize and reward peer review other than paying them?
Well, definitely. And I think to this class action lawsuit, obviously, I'm not a lawyer, as everybody says in these conversations in the very first sentence, and I'm doing this. It is true. But I think there are two things to it. First of all, do publishers necessarily have to pay money for reviewing? I don't think so. I think we are in a situation where we are exchanging a social benefit, a reputational benefit of reviewing for a top journal or publishing in a top journal against a commercial benefit for the publisher, right? So I guess Bourdieu's social capital approach helps for everybody who likes philosophy here to understand. I think that makes perfect sense. In my view, nobody is getting paid for the publication of an article as an author, rather the opposite. Most people have to bring money for open access publications. And I don't want to be cynical about it. I think publishers need to do much more to recognize, and in some cases, in their own interest, I would argue, reward reviewers to review for certain things. If you are being asked to review for one of the top journals in the world, obviously you don't need rewards. It is rewarding enough to know that you are rewarding for one of those journals and that you see that benefit. But how would it be if we could show that Costa's reviewing a paper has increased the quality of my paper by 30%, so I got a much nicer publication impact factor, reach of my research, and so on. I think that is something that technology offers today. We can build these solutions, and I think publishers should have a vested own interest in doing that and not see it as an additional burden on them. I think a little bit of a problem is that we always, in reviewer finding, and Kostas, you mentioned that as well, I think finding reviewers is not a problem, right? Motivating them to work is the problem. I can give you from all the databases out there based on their publication activity at least, and I think that's another problem. We don't know whether these people are great authors or whether these people are also great reviewers. You never know that, right? It's a little bit of a false friend, I think, that we are using here in academic publishing, where we say everybody who is a great author is a great reviewer. That can be very wrong as a statement. So I guess in many cases, actually, it is not the case. So I would say rewarding those people, making them happily work in reviewing an article, that's the challenge. And I would really focus on that, lawsuit or not, because I think for publishers, it creates, or for journals, for everybody who is a journal editor, it creates a competitive advantage. If you can motivate people by treating them well, you can't imagine what we hear about journals, how they treat their reviewers sometimes. It's unbelievable. So treating them well, understanding that everybody, the journal and the reviewer, is part of a service economy. And it's not just the reviewer that has to deliver on time, getting pressured with reminder emails every other day or something like that, but creating a social relationship where you work together in making an article better. And Kostas, I completely agree with you. Open peer review can help, in my view, in a lot of instances. It makes the reviewer visible. It helps them to basically claim that they had an impact on the paper, hopefully. And it will also drive up the quality of the input, right? Because if I know that my reviews are being seen, not just by the person who is the author of the article, but also by my other colleagues, maybe there is a way to create a discourse around that paper, and maybe I can have an important impact, and it can be valuable for me in my career as well. to spend this time on reviewing. So I think indeed publishers should do it independent of lawsuits in the world. Lawyers getting involved is always a sign that something is broken, right? That's not a good idea. So why not take this as an opportunity for publishers to really say, let's reposition peer review in a positive way and don't just see it as a liability and a burden in the process, but as something where we can actually add value to people who review today and author tomorrow, or the other way around.
And Kostas, I'm sure maybe stepping back into your previous life as a researcher and an author, and I guess a peer reviewer as well, that the concept of exchanging social benefit and social capital would resonate with you. Is that something that you'd concur with? That sounds reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with this, Ben, and obviously, I think that if publishers, work towards that kind of model, then authors and reviewers will definitely support it, especially if they see that they get a benefit from it.
Yeah, good. And if we sort of step back again and think about the length and the better peer review process again from your perspective, Kostas, what particular aspects of the current process could be improved, do you think, by technology?
So I think because the peer review process has many steps. So anywhere we could kind of improve, even by 0.1, it could bring significant improvement and less frustration. So I think there are several aspects of the peer review that can be improved. So one of them is reviewer selection, for example, and how we manuscripts with experts in the field. So there are already platforms in place that do that, where an algorithm could basically analyze the content of the manuscript and match them to potential reviewers based on their previous publications and expertise. So this can improve the precision of reviewer assignments and speeds up the process, obviously, depending on them agreeing to review. Now, the second one is reducing reviewer fatigue. So AI and machine learning tools can conduct an initial evaluation of the manuscript, checking for example, formatting issues, language quality, aims and scope matching, guidelines adherence, and potential ethical issues like plagiarism. So this reduces the burden on the reviewer to do these checks and allowing them to focus more on the actual work of the manuscript. So then the other thing that is speeding up the review process. So manuscript management platforms that we use, such as Scholar One and Editorial Manager, they already have automated workflows. For example, sending reviewer invitations, reminders, or tracking revisions. But further improvements can be done in these platforms to include deadline tracking or reviewer availability monitoring and seamless integrations with other academic services, such as the ones that we are talking now, with reviewers getting credit. Another one is enhancing review quality and feedback. So again, AI tools can analyze review reports to understand the tone, the depth, and the relevance of the report, and flag any reviews that are potentially rude or negative or unhelpful, and assist editors in maintaining a constructive review. And they can also identify whether reviewers have covered the main aspects of the manuscript and the work that is described. Also, increasing transparency and accountability. So blockchain technologies can create records of peer review process. So for example, making sure that every step of from submission to review, revision, decision, all these are traceable. And this will increase trust in the system by making clear that how editorial decisions are made and by whom. Also ethical compliance and fraud detection. So we already have tools such as Authenticate that help detect text plagiarism, but expanding these tools to detect more sophisticated forms of plagiarism, because these are always more and more clever. It could improve ethical compliance. And the last one, I think, is better recognition. So platforms like reviewer credits that allow reviewers to build the portfolio of the reviews and receive formal recognition for their contributions, and making sure that technology can further integrate these systems to their institutions and academic profiles, or other academic evaluations or IDs such as ORCID ID, that these can be all integrated together. So I think all these aspects of the peer review, there's a potential to improve by using AI and the technology that we have.
Yeah. And your description there, Kostas, just explains to people who maybe don't see the detail or the granularity around the peer review process and the complexity against which then we can apply the benefits of current and potential future technology. So if I can turn back to Sven and ask you about the impact of technology, both how you might have seen it change the current landscape of peer review and publishing to date, and obviously how we see AI and machine learning tools and similar shaping the future of peer review.
Well, I think there are two elements or two sides to it, right? First of all, technology has helped to, for those who have an interest in this, to increase the level of fraud quite dramatically on the negative side of things, right? So we are in an, even though I don't like the term, because there's a real world element to it, but we are in a kind of arms race situation, really, where we need to basically keep up with technology that is out there, that is being used by fraudulent actors, whoever they are. Usually it's not bad authors, but usually it's companies that want to make money in a process of paper milling, reviewer milling, or whatever you want to call it. So I guess that's the negative side of it, even though I would say that if you would look back into publishers lists for the last 20, 30, 40 years and would reanalyze all those papers, we would also find a lot of fraud that simply hasn't been detected back then because we didn't have the means to detect it. So I am really against this perception that technology is the end of the world and we are fighting against this huge wave of issues without being really prepared for it or equipped for it. On the other hand, I think we have the unique opportunity now with artificial intelligence and with technology in general, I would say, to really build a personal relationship with an author. Because I think, for example, reviewer availability in certain tools that is available, that are available to be bought, right? Reviewers are available, but they might not want to review for your specific journal or for that publisher, or they don't like to review for books, but rather for journals or for case reports or God knows what. We don't know these preferences. So publishers are doomed more or less to always create direct marketing assaults on reviewers by asking them for something because they can't build or in only very few cases can they build a kind of knowledge of the reviewer and what they want. I think that's where we can help That's why we are building right now some solutions on reviewer credits to make sure that this knowledge, if reviewers want to give it to us, so it's not kind of machine generated, but they basically input it into a system and say, I only want to review for World Scientific, but I'm not interested in reviewing for another publisher, for example. These information, I think, are vital, and these will always be, at this point, human information that need to be entered into the system. So building a relationship with the reviewer, I think, is one thing that we can all work on and get better on. The other one is really asking publishers to think from the reviewer's perspective, because right now the peer review is a technical process step for a lot of publishers that is costly, that is lengthy, and that has all sorts of unplannable elements, right? You never know when somebody responds how. You can never derive the information. He was quick last time, he will be quick again, because his working conditions or her working conditions might have changed completely. So I think thinking it from the reviewer's side, really looking at availability, really looking at how can we create a cross-publisher, publisher agnostic and media agnostic form in recognizing and rewarding. I mean, imagine in the print world, we were bound to say, we thank reviewers in the first issue, printed issue of the next copyright year for their service to the journal. Now we can do that real time. There is no point anymore in waiting, because your funding as a researcher, your funding applications don't wait until next January or March or April or something like that. So I guess that's what we can do. And then what I'm really excited about is a lot of reviewer assistants that we see now coming up. So structuring content, even though the manuscript might not be structured in the way that Kostas as a reviewer is used to it, it's really easy to structure it. It's really easy to help write a review report as somebody who is like Kostas and me, not a native speaker, but needs wants to be more productive in putting this in, I guess, Greek or German in my case, and then basically creating the review report from it, right? So I think there is a lot of options out there, and it's by no means all black and white, in my personal view.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd like to maybe come back to Sven. You mentioned earlier on about open peer review, and in the context of transparency and integrity. If I could ask Kostas, just to that point, what do you see as the role for open peer review models, and how, again, might technology facilitate their adoption?
Mm-hmm. So I've just realized that we're talking about open peer review, but we haven't explained to participants that might not be aware what open peer review is, what it is. So open peer review model is basically reviewers and authors are known, and reviews are made publicly available. And that has the potential to address some of the key issues in the traditional peer review process, such as transparency, accountability, and review quality. So I think that open peer review system can play a pivotal role in making the process more efficient, more impactful, and equitable for everyone. And one of the key advantages of open peer review is transparency, because by revealing the identities of reviewers and making their comments and reviews publicly available, the process becomes immediately more accountable. So reviewers are less likely to provide a very critical or unfair feedback, or be very rude, or because they know that their name is attached to the comments and the reviews that they provide, and it's publicly available to the academic community to evaluate the quality of the feedback that they've given. And I think there are already publishers out there, such as F1000 Research and BMC, that use online systems to publish both articles and peer review openly. Now, to answer the second part of your question, how technology can facilitate their adoption. So I think two main things. For sure, we need some kind of form of digital identifiers for reviewers. So we already have, and we know ORCID IDs. So reviewers and authors have these. So linking their review work to the academic profiles, that could be one thing. And also that can provide recognition and accountability, and also it can incentivize high quality reviews by, as we said, tying the review comments that they provide to their professional reputation. And the second one, I think, is on how technology can facilitate is, again, as I said earlier, with blockchain-based peer review, where every step of the peer review is tracked, is transparent, and it's securely stored, on a blockchain ledger. And there are, as Sven better knows than me, that platforms out there like Orvium that use blockchain to ensure that peer review histories are transparent and verifiable, and they reduce conflicts and concerns of interest or manipulation.
And yeah, I think open peer review has continues to have the great potential, but I think applying AI technology on top of that will sort of increase that potential, and increase the ability to, for example, collating multiple reviews around a particular paper and multiple perspectives. So again, I remain very positive about the capability specifically around open peer review, and encouraging more publishers to adopt open peer review, which has been the challenge. So just sort of thinking now about the sort of reimagining peer review, and we've talked about the current processes, and maybe one thing that we've not really addressed is the perhaps inherent biases that currently exist, we know exist within traditional peer review, and how perhaps applying AI technologies might amplify those biases. So how can we, question to Sven is, how can we ensure that the reimagined version of peer review can be inclusive and representative of diverse perspectives?
It's interesting that you asked that in this group, because if you look at the names on the screen, it seems a pretty diverse group of people that is here, at least geographically, from what I can tell. It seems that every world region is represented in terms of names, and that's great. So I think that's another benefit, right, of peer review. If you look at the net producer and of digital peer review, if you look at the net producers and the net consumers in terms of regions in the world or other parameters, there is still a huge imbalance, because in some research cultures, it's much more a core element to review. In others, it's much more a core element to produce articles, to write, basically, or to work in a lab or in a hospital or whatever situation. So I guess digitization really helps us if we are mindful of the fact that peer review should be an equitable and in every respect balanced exercise. I think if you just look in Europe alone, so being from Germany, I can tell you that the quality or the approach to peer review is very much, I tell you what you can do better, right? It is not improving your article and saying this is already, if it is, then this is already great. I would watch these 4 additional points. So even in one continent, from one country to another, we have huge differences just in research culture that have nothing to do with technology at all, but with kind of attitudes and whatever cultural traditions. And I think that's something that obviously continuously both publishers and also research institutions need to work on, to really make sure that we don't level that out, but that we better understand what peer review is for. It is not to kind of produce my own greatness by criticizing somebody, but the job here is to be humble and support somebody else in getting the best out of a piece of research in terms of publication output. And I think really helping with that is super important, and their technology can help. So I wouldn't want it to be a kind of it's all purple, dark blue, and pink in terms of colors, and we all love each other. It can be a hefty debate in terms of content, and it should be, it must be. But at the same time, I think technology can also there help to not amplify the differences that we see. If you see some of the reviewer finders in the world, that's also probably an interesting element to mention. What do you do if you want a quick response of a reviewer and hopefully a review? You can go down in your quality parameters, let's say in the H index of a potential reviewer compared to a great paper and the other way around. And I think that is something that we should discuss going forward. So how do we best match the quality of the reviewer, if I may say so, the experience of the reviewer with the quality and the complexity of the paper? Because it's not just getting two boxes ticked like accept, minor revisions, that's it, go through. That's the, if I may say so, that's the business side of things, right? And that is legitimate, of course. But there's also the research side. And I think for science and for research, it is really important to get that deeper values out of peer review, which I think we probably haven't focused on enough over the last year or two in the conversations. That was a very technical one, driven by retractions and how can we improve like the formal quality of peer review in terms of how do we avoid fraud, right?
And there is that concern around avoidance of fraudulent activity and bad actors. And as you I think you quite rightly said, it's more companies out there rather than all individual authors that are contributing to the volume of, for example, retractions that we saw last year. You may have seen the many articles, including the Nature News article, just and communicating the fact that over 10,000 articles were retracted last year. And so that is, again, a concern that AI technologies might amplify and facilitate that. But I think what we're doing here today and through the many discussions during this week, and there's been fantastic discussions around Peer Review Week, is just sort of raising awareness, but also engaging with the academic community and listening to researchers and getting that research perspective about their experience, both as an author and as a peer reviewer. So we've got some time for questions before we finish. Elena Grinari, you've got your hand up. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes, thank you so much. Actually, all excellent points. And I would just like to refer to the last remarks of Sven, where he said that he questioned how can you actually align the quality of the reviewer to the quality of the paper. And for this, of course, we also have editorial boards and the editors who assign essentially the reviewers to the papers. So there is some quality control taking place at this point at the outset. So maybe this is one mechanism, but of course, it's a great matter to be looked into. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, to quickly respond to that, Elena, I completely agree with you. My concern is a little bit that the improvement of technology in managing journals in a lot of cases might have led to a lower involvement of the actual editorial boards when it comes to this assignment process. So it's not just finding in a reviewer finder a reviewer that topically works, right? But there's more elements to it. So, but I completely agree with you. And that's why I think the human-assisted, human-supervised technology is super important. Don't let ChatGPT home alone for now, but rather make sure that somebody is an adult in the room is supervising it, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. And there are also issues with confidentiality. If you use large language models, I think this is a breach surely of confidentiality. I would never do it. If I were an editor, I would avoid it. Thank you.
And thank you, Elena. And that's another really good point. It's also a whole hour of discussion around confidentiality and privacy related to the use of large language models. And we know inherently that is an underlying concern, a real concern. But thank you for your question, Elena. PB, Patty, you've got a question.
Thank you, Martin. My question is actually two questions. I'll ask the first question first. See, sometimes what happens is that we submit a manuscript and we have no transparency into what stage of review that process is. And for example, like, after submitting a manuscript 6 months later, we keep following up with the editorial office and we keep getting only the response that it is under review. When we have some updates, we'll let you know. And this goes on for months together. Is there a mechanism to address this?
Good question. Kostas, would you like to take that question as the publisher?
Sure. So yeah, as you said, for now, we authors solely depend on the editor's feedback to check, basically manually check on the system the status of the manuscript, check that reviewers have been invited, if they've provided comments or not, and follow up to the author on that. So obviously, if there was an AI tool that could automatically feedback that to the author without the editor interference, that will be amazing, because, for example, you've got now so many other platforms that for example, you order something and you get a notification that the order has been dispatched or your order is about to arrive in, I don't know, next 2-3 hours. So if you can apply the same concept in the manuscript, where now your manuscript has been past the pre-screening process, now the manuscript has been assigned to one editor, two reviewers, or etc., or is pending decision. So this is where AI can shine and provide better engagement and trust between authors and publishers.
Okay.
Thank you, Kostas.
So, thank you. And so, as I understand, as a submitter of the manuscript or as a researcher, I have no mechanism by which I can get this issue redressed. Is that a right understanding?
So for now, we're kind of limited to the platforms that each publisher is using to kind of get a detailed kind of update on the status of your manuscript. And then at the same time, the editor that works for the publisher can help you with a kind of more detail on the status of your manuscript.
And of course, I think that is where my question is. See, it's not that, and this is specific to one submission which I have had for a particular journal. I don't want to bring out the details here, which is under review for 1 year. And I have been trying to follow up with the editorial office. By now, I have followed up 4 times, almost every 1.5 months. And all I keep getting a response back is that it is under review. When we have updates, we'll let you know. Is there some way I can kind of flag it or escalate it to some other forum where someone else will come and take a look at what is going on here?
I think PB, I think my recommendation would be to escalate it within the publisher itself, because it would seem that a year with no real update around your manuscript's peer review is extraordinarily long. So I would find within the publishing company for which the journal is from which the journal is published, to escalate it beyond the person that you may have been contacting.
Thank you, Martin. And here I want to bring out another point, right? It doesn't matter who the publisher is, including, let's say, World Scientific. When we go to a particular journal's webpage, there is nowhere I find any escalation matrix by which we can say that, okay, if my issue is not getting redressed here, I can go out to the next stage.
Yeah, that's a good point. That would be extremely helpful. I would expect publishers' editorial offices in particular to provide as much information as possible to support you as an author. Kostas, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, this feedback is very helpful to us to kind of understand what the needs of the authors are and try to work towards improving our processes and workflows to their benefit.
Thank you, both Martin and Kostas, for your input and at least taking this positively. My second query, rather, is many a times what happens is that we get response for revision of a submitted manuscript with very vague requirements or review feedback, such as the quality needs to be improved. Okay, the grammatics needs to be improved, or the figures were not up to standard. It doesn't give to a writer of the manuscript exactly what is being expected. Okay, now is there some way by which we can again raise a flag saying that this is something which is not understandable by us?
Yes, you can definitely. I mean, this is where the kind of handling editor or the editor who's making decision of your manuscript can have a big input, and basically they kind of need to read the comments provided by the reviewers, and if they feel that, as you said, they're quite vague, then what I will do, if I was the editor-in-chief, for example, I would feel that I would need to invite the opinion of a third or a fourth reviewer so I can have a comprehensive understanding of your manuscript and how I can evaluate it. So obviously that will improve the the review report that we get, and then you also understand what exactly you need to improve on your manuscript. So I would say that's more up to the editors-in-chief kind of understanding and decision to understand that they need better reviews and will understand the comments that the reviewers give, and then take action further to that.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your response and at least listening into the plight of the writers.
Thank you, PB, for your question. We have time probably for one more question if anybody else has another question for Sven or Kostas. Lindsay Hare, hi.
Hello. I'm interested in these comments about reviewer fatigue. There was a great presentation yesterday from Baha Mamani at Elsevier talking about reviewer fatigue. And she had some very interesting comments to make about what percentage of the author base are actually being invited to participate in the peer review conversation. There is an ever-growing corpus of new researchers publishing new research. And it does seem that some of that comes down to suitability. We know that lots of authors probably will only publish once, so may not be sufficiently expert to act as reviewers. But is there a larger element here that comes down to the editor's preference for inviting their own personal networks rather than reaching out to the fullness of the academic community? And what could publishers do to address this?
Sven, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, happy to do so. So, Lindsay, I agree with you. It's interesting to see how journal editors invite reviewers and based on what. And we all know that reviewer finders out there, automated reviewer finders in different submission systems and so on, and in our system is one thing. But we also know that the reality is oftentimes Excel lists, right? And I'm here in Washington at a Silverchair event, and we had the same conversation yesterday where somebody said, if I want to reject an article, I know whom I have to ask as a scientific editor to get a reject. Well, I guess there's always a kind of tension between pragmatism, if you want, to advance the process. Also to PB's earlier questions, how do you make sure that things eventually come to an end? On the other hand side, obviously rigor is needed to really improve the content of the article. So we have been talking to different journals, and some of them, one journals group, a very prestigious one, asked us whether we could find reviewers for them that have never reviewed before for any of the journals of this group, which I found a really interesting question to increase diversity in a very pragmatic way by saying, you know, find people who are on our quality level, very high standards, and at the same time have never reviewed for us, because we don't want to always fish in the same pond, or whatever you say. I guess that's a challenge, but I think there is obviously in human behavior the trend to, wherever you can, come back to those people that have done a great job in the past, right? One way or the other. So I think that's why a lot of managing editors or in-house editors in different publishers have their own lists that they are wary to share with their colleagues in other journals in the same publisher, because they know how productive they are as reviewers. So I think that is a challenge, and that's something that really publishers, managements have to, editorial managements have to fix, in my view. Kostas, I don't know how you think about it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sven, and there's no kind of guidelines as to what is acceptable or what is not. And we do have the tools, as I've explained earlier, that can help editors do a kind of more inclusive choice of the pool of reviewers they can potentially invite to review. But at the same time, we haven't trained those people that invite the reviewers to make these informed decisions as to what is acceptable, what to avoid, etc. So we definitely need to invest more into that to make people aware and make people, you know, understand of the publisher and the peer review process better. And so the whole peer review is more engaging and helpful for everyone.
Lindsay, I'm interested to know what's shaped your question. Are you a researcher or a publisher?
I'm a consultant with Maverick, but in a previous life, I was director of peer review for Taylor and Francis. So my own experience is that there is a huge opportunity to reach out to a far wider group of people than are traditionally being asked. And that when we talk about reviewer fatigue, we may be talking about the fatigue of a relatively small group of people compared to the potential corpus of reviewers that are out there who might be able to be skilled up, be interested to be included in the conversation, would like to be invited.
Thank you for sharing that, Lindsay, and your expert background would greatly inform that. So thank you again. We have a few minutes left now. Thank you for your questions. Just to close up, I did want to just ask Sven and Kostas a little takeaway question, final question. So to both of you, if you could implement one revolutionary change to the current peer review system, what would that be and why? I'll throw that over to Kostas to begin.
So if I could summarize everything we've discussed so far, then that could give you the answer. No, I would like, if I was, you know, to choose one, I would like to have a fully integrated AI-supported open peer review platform, so we can maintain transparency, collaboration, and accountability, whilst at the same time we safeguard anonymity if that's necessary. So I think this change could transform peer review from a closed system that is now into an open, more collaborative and more efficient process. And I think ultimately will help advance science more quickly, fairly, and inclusively.
And Sven, for you?
Unfortunately, I'm not so far away from that. I don't get it that everything that we see in a digital world is being rated, reviewed, opinions assigned, whether that is Airbnb, whether that is restaurant ratings and whatever. Everybody can do it. Everybody does it everywhere. There is no issue in creating either a kind of fake identity or real identity in these systems. And I think it's more and more real identity is really where you give feedback on your latest stay in an Airbnb in southern France or something like that. And like Kostas, I would just like to make every peer review transparent immediately, because I think it would be a huge gain for science and research to also make use of those comments, not about think about the grammar in this paragraph. I'm not interested in that, and I think I understand it's important. Yet I don't think that that is something that should be covered by peer review too much, anyhow. But the input, like, have you looked at this? Did you evaluate those questions as well? I think that's so relevant for research. It's like negative results in other cases, and I don't understand that we are not making more use of that for the research process as a whole.
Great, thank you. It's a really nice way for both of you to wrap up this this session. There's obviously so much to talk about in so little time, but thank you both very much for your time. It's been an engaging conversation, and thank you for the questions that were given. So on behalf of World Scientific Publishing, I'd like to thank the attendees. There will be a recording of this session available post today, and we will be producing a transcript as well to share with everybody. But for the moment, I wish you a good day, good evening, and thank you again for your time and attention.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Bye.
Bye.